All right, we should be good to go. So feel free to ask your questions and we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Oh, I should clean my glasses. Where did you get your PhD? I'm not telling. That was one piece of information I keep to myself. Yes, going to bed at my usual time constitutes running away. I had no idea. I had no idea it was that silly. Did somebody say that recently? Time is a particle. Your opinion? It's not. That's my opinion. Is math fun for you? It can be. It can be very. So math can be very satisfying. Fun. I don't know if fun is the right word. Because it's. I mean, it's my job. Like I'm not like, you know, like it's not like giving me endorphins, but it can be very very satisfying when things work out. How come everything is made of atoms, but some things are alive and some aren't? Well, because life is just a particular arrangement of atoms. Not all arrangement of atoms are considered alive. That's all. I don't understand non-Euclidean things. So the difference between Euclidean geometry and non-Euclidean geometry is just one statement. So roughly speaking, the fifth postulate of Euclid's elements, Euclid was the first one to kind of formalize geometry as we know it. The fifth postulate is that two parallel lines never touch. That's roughly one way of phrasing it. There's other ways, but that's roughly one way of phrasing it. However, let me rephrase that two parallel lines always stay the same distance away from each other. However, if you drop that postulate, meaning that you can allow parallel lines to cross, you can allow parallel lines to diverge, now you have non-Euclidean geometry. Have you seen a Higgs boson? A Higgs bosom? No, I haven't. Is time travel possible? Probably not to the past, but to the future, certainly. Why does quantum oscillate? Well, quantum systems are described by the Schrodinger equation, which is a wave equation. So it's going to oscillate like a wave. Let's talk about warp drive from Star Trek. I have several videos on it. Why do you like my glasses? I don't know, they're new. Could dark matter have complex chemical-like interactions with itself? My understanding, and I could be wrong on what the current consensus is, but my understanding is that we currently believe that dark matter doesn't interact with itself a whole lot. Because if it did, then we would, it wouldn't stay in as large halos as it does. But I could be mistaken on that. There's a person denying Earth existing on this app right now. You should go into their life. No, I'm going to answer questions here today. Can you break the laws of physics? I cannot. Have you ever lost a debate? Yeah, sure. How would you recommend someone to become a self-taught physicist? Well, you're going to have a hard time. But the best way would just be to pick up textbooks and then use online resources like, say, various places on YouTube, Khan Academy, MIT OpenCourseWare to kind of supplement those. Right. So yeah, I mean, we assume that it doesn't interact. Of course, the different models that we have of dark matter, my understanding is that some of the models, like for example, dark photon models, they can have interactions with other things. But we don't know. But as far as the GR is concerned, we assume that it's not interacting, or at least very, very little interaction. Is grilled cheese in space better? Yes. But over 90% of the matter energy in the universe is on dark matter form. No, so it's something like 80% of the matter in our universe is dark matter. And then, so that makes up roughly 33, 34% of the total energy content of our universe, and then the rest is dark energy. Wolverine, I do this every Wednesday. You must be obsessed. What physicist makes most money? My guess is going to be the famous ones. Do you debate flat earthers? Yeah. They tend to run away from me, though. Is the universe eternal? What's the consensus, and what do you think? I suspect so. In whatever sense eternal might mean so in whatever sense that you might have a clock, the clock, I suspect, could in principle be wound back forever. But this is speculation. The problem of time is a serious problem. But I don't know what the consensus is. Have you lost a debate? Yeah, I have. It was the most memorable one was a while ago. It was I was debating a communist, and they knew much more about like the global foreign policy of the United States than I did. So I was literally schooled. I was taught a lot of new things that I didn't know. Have you ever debated Darling H. Dawkins? Yes. What are time crystals? I'm going to make a video about that at some point, but the basic gist is that a regular crystal, a spatial crystal, is a crystal that has a repeating pattern in space. So if you move a certain amount over, then you get the same thing back. A time crystal is the same thing, but a repeating pattern in time. So if you move a little bit forward in time, then you get the same thing back. Do you disagree with any common chemistry theories? I don't really know a lot about chemistry. At singularity, by definition, time ceases to exist. The singularity is not like a physical thing. He skips my comments. I literally just read yours. What do you think about the quantum gravity research group? I'm not familiar with, I mean, that it's a very generic group name. I don't know that one, whichever one you're thinking of. How fast can a black hole spin? In some sense, the fastest it can spin is the speed of light. More specifically, there is an upper limit to how fast it can spin, because as it spins faster, the event horizon basically gets as far away. Let me rephrase. So you have an inner and outer. We can solve this equation by looking at the Kerr metric. And I can never remember how this works. But there is an upper limit beyond which you have a naked singularity, which would just be a singularity without any event horizon protecting it, which we think can't exist. If you had to complete a bachelor again, what would you choose other than physics or math? Maybe English linguistics. Darth Dawkins would cook you. I mean, last time he didn't cook me. Can I prove I exist? Hi, I'm here. Why do meteors always fall in craters? They don't always fall in craters. They make the craters when they fall. Can you expand on the new evidence that recently reopened the Big Crunch theory? So I'm not sure what the consensus is on this. This is my speculation. The evidence that I'm talking about came out in April from the DESI group, the Dark Energy Spectroscopy Instrument Group. Basically, they showed that if their measurements are correct, which again, this is tentative data. It's not like the significance is weak, so we're waiting for more data. But if the data continues to represent what they seem to have shown, then it would be the case that in some sense, the strength of dark energy, or rather the strength of dark energy is getting weaker, which would kind of open the door just a little bit for a recollapse. Have people attack you personally IRL because of your TikTok? I've never met somebody in person, except at like physics conferences, who actually knows my content. What's the best argument for God you've heard? I don't know. Thoughts on geocentrism's viability of Einstein relativity states impossible to prove one or the other. So geocentrism is just a choice of reference frame. It's just not a very useful one. What's a physicist's favorite? Yeah, that's a good one. Does consciousness really rise from quantum mechanics and microtubules? I kind of doubt it, but I'm happy to be proven wrong on the matter. Can I summarize the debate with Darth Dawkins? Yeah, he just he made a bunch of. I asked him for definitions of things on like what he means by like an ultimate creator, and he basically went around in circles until he got frustrated because his definitions were circular. So, and then he rage quit. Can you do a video on observer bias? It seems like people don't understand it enough. Maybe commented on a video or something. Thoughts on the theory that expansion of the universe is driven by merging with baby universes? I've never heard that. Seems kind of far-fetched, though. Thoughts on the algebraic approach to Kerr solution? Algebraic approaches in GR are generally really, really nice because it means that you don't actually have to solve a horribly nonlinear partial differential equation, but they're also rare. So what do you recommend for new physics majors in one semester? Just take the normal curriculum. You'll be fine. Thoughts on ongoing work to derive space and time from Schrodinger's equation? It'd be neat. I imagine that they're probably using like the Wheeler-DeWitt equation though, and not just the Beer-Schrodinger equation, because the Beer-Schrodinger equation has time built into it. Define antimatter? It's like regular matter, but take all of the numbers that we associate to the regular matter except mass, and then put a negative sign. So like if something has a positive charge, make it a negative charge. If it has positive helicity, make it a negative helicity. Is there any evidence at all to support a multiverse, or is it just fantasy? If by multiverse you mean like separate universes that are like in different places, there's not really evidence. There's versions of the multiverse that are consistent with the observations that we have, but nothing distinguishing. Is it taboo to discuss the validity of the moon landing in your profession? It's not taboo, it's just stupid because we know that we went. Non-Euclidean space has never been proven to exist. We literally live on a non-Euclidean space. A sphere is non-Euclidean. There where isn't mass also isn't what? Okay. Quantum mechanics origin is sound frequency. No. When the lights line up with your eyes, looks like you're looking through the phone. Oh, well, that's neat. Explain your PhD thesis in simple terms. My PhD thesis was kind of three things glued together. But roughly it was describing, I constructed new geometric ways to describe certain types of, I came up with new kind of clean ways to describe a particular particular properties of spaces that don't change when you stretch them in various ways. You're getting a PhD in physical chemistry. Congrats. How do you know the moon is real if you haven't been there? Actually, I was on the moon 6 weeks ago. Have something been proven mathematically but turns out proven otherwise in observation? Well, sure, but that just means that one of the assumptions of the mathematical, argument that you built was flawed. That's all. Why do we then learn spheres in Euclidean geometry? So you can embed a sphere in Euclidean geometry, but the surface of the sphere itself has its own intrinsic non-Euclidean geometry. Do you believe that change is real? I don't know what that question means. How did you know that physics was what you wanted to study? I thought black holes were cool, and I did whatever it was that could get me to learn more about black holes. So it was more math related than physics? Yes. Arguably, my PhD was a mathematical PhD, but considering I did my master's and my education was in physics, and my justification was in physics, they still gave me a physics PhD. Hence the whole mathematical physics thing. I write papers that are both physics motivated and more physics based, and I also write papers that are more pure math. So I'm kind of at some weird crossover between the two. What happens when two black holes collide? They merge, they become one black hole, and then they emit a lot of gravitational radiation. What are the chances of a black hole entering the solar system? Close to zero. Do you know your IQ? I do not. Will physics explain consciousness? I would put money on the neurologists first. Are black holes still as cool as you thought they were? 100% they are. Do you think there's another planet in our solar system, or is that just BS? Well, there's lots of things in our solar system. Whether there's another big thing, I don't know. What's the fastest way to disprove the flat Earth using physics? There's a lot of ways. I mean, you could just ask them about the optics of how a sunset works, and they'll find that they can't actually explain it. What's the, okay. Why lie about having a PhD? Well, it's not a lie, and I've shown it on lives before, and it's actually in one of my videos, so, but okay. How far off is quantum computing from being impactful in society? That's a good question. It depends on what you mean by impactful. If by impactful you mean like we have to like pass laws, maybe 10 years, I don't know. What would be a practical application to physics? I don't understand the question. You mean what, like my work? You learn from man-written book but won't read the Bible? A, I have read most of the Bible. B, man-written book is not what science is. Science is experimental in nature. Are you astrophysicist or particle physicist? Neither. I'm a mathematical physicist. Lots of questions, and I appreciate it, but I will have to, skip some because I'm trying to read the most recent. Is it possible to call life of a human a frequency? No, that's not a good use of the word frequency. If time is relative, does that mean our lives are determined? Our future is playing out right now? Well, look, it depends on your view on what time is. Under my worldview, the universe is deterministic. So in some sense, like everything exists, but there's no sense in which we can say it exists simultaneously because that's a temporal notion. What's the most interesting thing you know about black holes? And this is something I learned recently. If a black hole is accelerating, it emits gravitational radiation. And that's the only time it emits gravitational radiation. Sorry. That's the only time so let me rephrase. A rotating black hole doesn't emit gravitational radiation unless it's accelerating. Why is a photon massless but two photons have mass? Two photons only have mass if they are not traveling in the same direction. And that's because then there is a rest frame where you have a center of mass that's not moving at the speed of light. And hence you can talk about its mass. Is the universe a closed system? I'm not sure if that notion even applies to the universe. Any tips on getting into graduate school for physics? Apply to a lot. And when writing your applications, make sure that you mention some people by name at the universities that you're applying to. Just that way then they actually know that you're talking about. What distinguishes mathematical physics from theoretical physics? I would say that mathematical physics is probably more distantly related to like experiments. I'm interested in, so like the things that interest me are like, if you take the mathematical models that we have, like general relativity or, various versions of quantum gravity, things like that. If you take those mathematical models, what can we say about the consequences of those mathematical models? What can we prove using those frameworks? Because if those mathematical models are true, or correct, then whatever we can prove must also be true, must also be correct. So that's the kind of thing that interests me. Can you explain the Higgs boson? The Higgs boson is an excitation in the Higgs field. Now, a field is just a thing. It's a quantity that is defined at every point in space-time. So it might have a different value at different places, different times. But what the Higgs field is just, and the analogy I usually give is something like space-time molasses. So the things that actually sludge through the molasses, they get slowed down, and the only way that you can be slowed down is if you have mass. And so it gives those things mass. Wait, you're saying black holes don't have gravity sometimes? No. They do have gravity, they just don't emit gravitational radiation. What's your area of focus? Mostly differential geometry and general relativity. Will you speak on your credentials momentarily so I know how well researched my answers are? I have a PhD in physics, a master's in physics, a bachelor's in physics, and a bachelor's in mathematics. And I'm currently working at a university as a researcher. I have like 9 publications in the last 3 years. Do you think we'll figure out quantum gravity in our lifetimes? I hope so, but that's hope. That's not based on anything. Name them? Name what? Can you explain how the electric field and the magnetic are linked via relativity? I actually have an old video on this. But the way to think about this is, it's hard to explain without mathematics. I mean, magnetism is what happens when you have moving charges. And so from one point of view, a stationary charge will be a moving charge from another reference frame. And so special relativity tells you how to go from reference frame to reference frame. Do you prefer the many worlds or Copenhagen interpretation? I prefer the many worlds. So the first 3 were what became my dissertation. So in some sense, those were in the works for like 3 years or so. But then there were more that came afterwards. I'm hoping to keep up 3 papers a year, but it's probably not going to happen. Thoughts on diversity in physics? Physics is unfortunately underdiverse, which is a shame. Your publication, I'm not going to tell you the titles of my publications. Do you think we will use teleportation within the next 100 years? No. Is a shadow matter? No, it's just the lack of stuff. Why not? Personal reasons? I just would rather stay anonymous, that's all. Quinn, I'm glad that you're in physics. What is a quantum eraser experiment? The idea is roughly, and I always have to get the details of this correct, or I always have to think to make sure I get the details of this correct, but the idea is basically, depending on the result of, so you take a photon and you split it, you can send it two ways, and then you take one of those photons, so you have two entangled photons now. One of those photons is going to pass through the double slit apparatus. And whether it's observed or not will depend on what's going on with the other entangled photon. And you can kind of observe the photon at a later date. And that will, so you can either observe the photon, or you can let the photon kind of, or you can kind of erase your observation of the photon. And depending on what you do affects what you see on the other end, what you see for the through the first photon going through the double slit. I do have a video on this that probably explains it better. It's really hard to explain without diagrams, though. Are we like 250,000 years overdue for the pole shifting? I don't know. That's not my area. Maybe. Where does entropy go in Maxwell's demon? It doesn't go anywhere. Maxwell's demon is doing work. How do we know the age of exoplanets? That's a good question. I don't know. I suspect that we use the age of the planets because generally, at least from our solar system, planets are as old as the star. So if we know the age of the star, then we can figure out the age of the planets. At least that'd be my guess. Does determinism come with the idea that all randomness can be solved? It depends on what your brand of determinism is, but in some sense, yes, that would be the kind of basic level determinism. What are force particles? Force particles are kind of the smallest unit of force that can be relayed between two charged things, for example. So, for example, there is the smallest amount of electromagnetic information that can be conveyed from one charged object to another charged object, and that's called a photon. All of the other forces have a similar thing. I'm not going to say there's the smallest amount of force, because that's not quite true. You have a thermodynamics question for me? Ask it. Do you think dark matter is most likely a WIMP, or do you believe in a different theory? I'm leaning towards WIMP. It just seems so plausible, but yeah, I'd love to be wrong about that. Are magnetic waves charged? No. No electromagnetic waves, magnetic waves. Well, there are no magnetic waves without electric waves. Electromagnetic waves are uncharged. They interact with charges. So shadow is a noun, but being a lack of matter, light's a descriptive noun. I mean, sure, yeah, it's like there are a lot of nouns that aren't actual stuff. Like, what would be another example? There, right? There just refers to something. It's not actually like a thing. Are you a theist or an atheist? I'm an atheist. Does the first law of thermodynamics mean energy is eternal or only local presentation of energy? The first law of thermodynamics states that in a closed system with time-symmetric laws of physics, then the energy is conserved. However, we don't know if we live in a closed system. We don't know if the laws of physics are time-symmetric. In fact, they seem like they're not. So it's hard to say whether it applies to the whole universe. Certainly at a local, on like a small scale, locally, it certainly does hold. Can you elaborate on the probability of the existence of a Kugelblitz in our universe? So as far as we can tell, they can't form now. They may have been able to form in the very, very early universe. But then this isn't like two lasers bumping into each other. It's just that you had really, really high energy radiation filling the entire universe, and some of that clumped up and became a Kugelblitz. So it's hard to say what the actual probability is. I'm sure that there are people who know the answer to that. These are people who would be studying primordial black holes and potential machos. This is the type of dark matter, but I don't know the answer to that. What's the most interesting thing you've ever learned so far? That's such a broad question. I really need to come up with like a good answer to that because people ask it a lot. Is the magnetic field sort of like relativistic lag compared to the electric field? I wouldn't I wouldn't say it that way, no. Have you ever witnessed or do you believe the existence of dimensions? Yeah, we live in 4 space-time dimensions, 3 space dimensions, 1 time dimension. Are you into philosophy? Mildly. Does a virtual photon travel only at the speed of light? Virtual photons don't exist. What do you think about consciousness? I like having it. Where is graphene going? Where can we see it at scale? It's just really hard to make. So like while there's a lot of very interesting properties it has, making it in large quantities is very, very challenging. Do you think it's possible for protons to decay? I kind of hope so, because I'd like to just see some new physics. Advice for someone pursuing their PhD. Meet with your advisor frequently and make sure that you get along with them. Are you ashamed of your... Oh, okay, that's just a troll. Block. Are Einstein's equations fake? No, absolutely real. Do you have a favorite dark matter candidate? I kind of lean towards WIMP, but again, like I'm not, this isn't my area, so like I'm not looking at all of the recent data, so. WIMPs just sound nice. LED engineer, speed of light is variable. Where does that leave relativity? How is the speed of light variable? Do you believe the universe is completely deterministic? In a quantum way. So under the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, the universe is deterministic. What are your thoughts on simulation theory? It's religion for tech bros. How would you explain the fourth and fifth dimensions? I wouldn't. As far as I know, we don't have any evidence that they exist. What do you say about universal absolutes? I don't know what you mean by that. Superconductors can slow down photons. Well, look, so what is true is that when you have electromagnetic waves traveling through non-vacuums, then the electromagnetic wave doesn't travel at the speed of light. But that's because the electromagnetic wave is no longer just a free electromagnetic wave, it's interacting. So we don't expect it to travel at the speed of light. What are your qualifications? I have 3 degrees in physics and 1 degree in mathematics. One of the degree in physics is a PhD, so. Why is it so hard to unify the quantum field theory and general relativity? This is a good question that at this point I actually can kind of recite the answer to. Roughly, it's that if we wanted to do general relativity in the standard quantum field theory way, the way that we typically do this is that we kind of have just a few free parameters that we have to fix with experiments, and then our quantum field theory becomes consistent. However, because of the behavior, because of the mathematical structure of general relativity, it's highly nonlinear, it's really, really badly behaved. If we wanted to do that same procedure, you would have to run an infinite number of experiments to tune your infinite parameters. So that's roughly it. How many universes are out there? Well, depends on what you mean by universe, but 1. Thank you for the glasses, Ebar. Where does gravity come from besides your imagination? It comes from mass and energy and momentum and stress. Do you enjoy quantum physics? How would you explain all the irregularities within behavior? What irregularities? I mean, I enjoy it insofar as like it's cool, but it's not my area of expertise. Well, okay, it's not my field of, it's not the area of my research, but like having a PhD in physics kind of makes you an expert on it, at least an expert in the lay public's view. What's the weight of the universe? If by that you mean the total mass, we don't know, because we don't know how big the whole universe is. Can you talk about time being a particle? It's not a particle. Better to DM you for a calculation? I'm probably not going to do a calculation for you. So, what do you know about string theory? A decent amount. Was the fine structure constant a random occurrence? It's really hard to say. How did your perspective on determinism influence your belief in free will? I don't think free will is a thing. With the evidence of first, second, and third dimensional plane, how can we rule out fourth and fifth? Well, we just don't have evidence for them. If mass attracts a mass, then shouldn't a boulder attract a pebble? It does. It's just the force is weaker than the frictional forces that these things experience. Can you please give your best definition of physics for a newbie? Physics is the study of matter and motion. Was your PhD worth it? Well, I didn't pay anything for it, so yeah. Have I seen Dr. James Beecham? I have. I follow him. I'm kind of bummed out that he doesn't follow me back, actually. What's the opposite of a physicist? I don't know. I don't know if there is a opposite. Do you believe there will ever be a theory of everything? I don't know. I don't know. What's your theory on string theory? I'm not sold on it, but I still think it's worthwhile to investigate. What are your thoughts on assembly theory? I don't know anything about it. Do you think researchers will soon invent an AI advanced enough to replace what mathematicians do? Soon? It depends on what you mean by soon. I'm sure it'll happen eventually, at least to some extent. Probably not that soon, though. Are you ready to admit that Newton is smarter than Einstein? No, it's not true. Einstein's the GOAT. Can you tell me how physics explains the concept of time? Physics doesn't currently do that. Depending on which, at least according to relativity, time is just another dimension of space-time. So it's on the same footing as space. But we don't know like what it is. It's just that's the model. That's what the model says. If matter can't be destroyed and is only transferred, does that mean it lasts forever? Matter can be destroyed. It happens all the time in nuclear reactions. A good example would be when you have an electron and an antimatter electron, a positron, collide. They both disappear forever. Bender, thanks for the glasses. By the way, I do have a Cash App in my bio. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee if that's a way that you want to support me if you're interested. Do you meditate? No, I don't. What are the odds that Garrick was just a tailor who was really interested in politics? Oh, easily he was just a tailor. I use interferometry at work. Light speeds is variable. What does that mean for relativity? Are you doing interferometry in a medium? Because otherwise, go get your Nobel Prize, I guess. Can we create mass from pure energy? Yeah. In principle, yes. In practice, we can create more mass from less mass that has energy. Whose side are you on? Who invented calculus? Leibniz and Newton both did. We split the baby in half. The center of the Earth was hollow. Would someone be able to float in there? Yeah, sure. Copenhagen, many worlds, or some third thing. I'm a many worlds kind of guy. More dimensions are inevitable. I mean, if you can prove it, or if you can make a theory that makes good predictions that requires it, great. Otherwise, I'm not going to believe you. According to something I don't remember in physics, things have chances to move on their own. What you're talking about is quantum mechanics. It's like a quantum mechanics thing, but that's explained by the many worlds interpretation, and so you still have determinism there. If the axis of a gyroscope is unaffected by gravity, is the space inside that axis also unaffected? I don't know what you mean by that question, but yeah, in principle. Are you a member of Mensa? I don't. I mean, I haven't like tried to apply. Did you just refute the law of conservation? The law of conservation of what? I mean, matter isn't conserved. It's just not. We can make matter. We can destroy matter. Matter is not conserved. Do you have beef with other physicists? No, I don't. Yeah, everyone else has to come up with a disappearing world version, exactly. Saw you mod MDD before? What's MDD? Thoughts on the grounding for the metaphysics and morals and the supposed right to lie for philanthropy? I'm not going to get into that today. Will you be doing debate after this? No, I have to record something after this. How do we isolate positrons? How do we make matter? So when we collide proton beams at very, very high energy, they produce tons of new matter. They just do. They produce tons of new matter because they have such high energy. There's also something called the Schwinger effect, which I don't think has been experimentally demonstrated yet. But basically, if you shoot two lasers at each other fast enough, or not fast enough, sorry, at a high enough energy, then that can also produce matter-antimatter pairs. I don't think I've been on modern day debates. Have I? Have I been on modern day debates? I don't think I have. What's the difference between leptons and quarks? Leptons don't interact via the strong nuclear force. Is time fundamental or an emergent property of the universe? That's not clear. I suspect it's emergent, in the same way that space is probably emergent. Yeah, there's also the Bright-Wheeler effect, that too. But the Schwinger effect, also a thing. Are you doing research currently? If so, yes, I am. I'm currently working on some math projects. Am I actually doing any physics projects right now? Yes, I am doing a physics project. I'm studying, I'm currently working on something about the stability of rotating, accelerating black holes in a positively curved, or in a de Sitter spacetime. The law of conservation states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. Well, that law is not a law. It's not true. It's convenient for chemistry. It's a good approximation for chemistry. But once you start involving nuclear physics, it's completely out the window. How's Babs doing? Her allergies are really bad today. What tells you whether a given particle interacts with a field? Well, we just measure it. Like, if we don't know, we can measure it. If we do know, then we just have a theory for it that tells us which one does which. Can you try to explain what was before the Big Bang if there were no spatial dimensions or time? We don't know if there was a before the Big Bang. We also don't know that there wasn't space or time before the Big Bang, if there was before the Big Bang. These are common misconceptions. What do you think of Eric Weinstein's theory? It's not complete. I'm not going to read something that's a half-completed, half-baked idea. Hubble constant and Hubble tension, they say no tension, vacuum decay, thermal linear. That's not a question, that's just a string of words. Does an undecided quantum state have more energy than a collapsed state? Depends on the system. It could, but generally, well, yeah, it just depends on the system. So where does the matter go? It disappears. You can destroy matter. You can create new matter. It's just gone. It's not conserved. What are some laws that people often state as fact that aren't true? In our universe, matter conservation and energy conservation. Do you have a favorite science YouTube channel? PBS Spacetime. What's my salary like? Right now, it's very good considering the country I live in. But that's out of the ordinary for a person in my position. I just got lucky. From a physics perspective, is there a TV wall mount that would be optimal for southern mounts? Ask an engineer. Is there any implication for the fact that gravitational wave moves at the speed of masslessness? Well, it's just more evidence that Einstein was right. What's an easy way to remember each type of boson and their corresponding forces? I don't have a mnemonic for it. I've just read about them enough that I just remember, I guess. Is there a property of the particle that would tell you it interacts with the field? I mean, it's just the charges. If a thing has electromagnetic charge, then it interacts with the electromagnetic field. If it has color charge, then it interacts with the gluon field. So yeah, in a sense, but we kind of define the charge of a particle by how it interacts. Is Hubble tension solved? I haven't been following it that closely, so I'm not sure, but I know that there was some talk of it being solved, but I feel like I would have heard about it if it had been solved, so probably not. What kind of new matter have we created? We create antimatter all the time. That's new matter. That didn't exist prior. We just make it. I don't actually know how the antimatter factory in Geneva works. I don't know what process they use, but I imagine that they use a particle accelerator. Does many worlds theory offer an explanation as to the conservation of energy of collapsing states? Well, look, whether the collapsing state has more or less energy than or whether the collapsed state has more or less energy than the superposed state just depends on the system, right? In that you can have a superposition of different energy states, and then it just doesn't have a well-defined energy, and then it collapses to one of them. What is dark energy and dark matter? So what they are is something like dark energy is something that seems to explain the expansion of our universe, and dark matter is something that seems to explain the extra gravitational attraction that we see in galaxies, for example. But what actually composes them, we don't know. But we can't create or destroy energy. Well, we can't, but the universe does. Have you ever come up with your own theory in physics or mathematics? Yeah, that's kind of the job. Thank you for the hat. What do you think is the most profound unanswered question in physics today? Potentially what time is. What is the God particle? It's the Higgs boson. It's just, the God particle is just a bad name for it. What if space-time is spherical and dark energy is what it's filled with? I don't know what that means. Do you describe to A or B theory? B theory. Do you believe in God? I do not. How do they tell which galaxies are further away? I actually just made a video on this, at least one way that we can tell. But roughly you can tell by how bright a galaxy is, how big a galaxy appears to be, and how red a galaxy is. Is your wife a physicist too? No, she is a lawyer. How do we destroy energy? We can't. Again, we can't. The universe seems to make new energy. This isn't something that we can do. It's just a property of the universe. Can you make me a gallon of water? Go to the sink. Is your wife single? She is not. Do you think that black holes could be white holes in other universes? I don't think so. Matter is destroyed, would it not become energy? Energy is not like a substance. Energy is a property. How many beers should you drink? Try one. So the energy can't be created or destroyed was light. It's a very good approximation to the truth. At the cosmological scale, it's not true. But on Earth, it's so close to true that we may as well assume it's true. Well-publicized literature disagrees with you on the law of conservation. Well, then that well-publicized literature is wrong. I imagine that you're probably reading like chemistry textbooks or like early physics textbooks. We know more now. Sorry. God particle and observation effect needs to be erased from people's minds. They really do. Do you think we will have to leave Earth in our lifetime? No, I don't think so. Who's the best living physicist? Okay, so I'm going to be biased, but I'm going to say Roger Penrose. Laws are absolute in science, not many absolutes. No, they're not. That's the interesting thing. They're not absolutes. They apply in certain regimes, and that's where they apply. Wait, but law of conservation is what Einstein used to come up with this theory. How can that be? No, he didn't use law of conservation of mass or anything to come up with relativity. He used relativity, the relativity of reference frames to come up with relativity. Energy conservation isn't even built into Einstein's theory. Gravity is moderated by gravitons. Why do we think only super high energy colliders would make it? Well, first of all, in principle, any mass accelerating would produce gravitons. The trouble is that they're really hard to detect. Although I don't think anybody's saying that you need a giant particle accelerator to create gravitons. Maybe just gravitons that we can detect, because they'd have to be really energetic. you have any insight on the effects of radiation on semiconductor devices? It's bad for them. Do you think space-time itself behaves like a superfluid? I don't have an opinion on that. Law versus theory. Law is an empirical relation that is observed about some system. So you might say that the ideal gas law is an empirical relation. It's just something observed about certain types of gases. It's just true for certain types of gases. At least it's like the relate. It's a mathematical formula that just tells you how two things relate in some subset of observations. Theories are mathematical formalisms that typically will correspond to some physical thing and kind of explain how that thing works and allow you to make predictions. Is string theory a dead-end science? No, I don't think so. What's the most exciting thing happening in stat physics right now? I have no idea. We don't have an ideal gas to observe, though. That's why laws are not like always. That's why laws are not absolutes, right? Will we ever have FTL travel? I suspect not. Can infinity exist in physical reality? Some versions I think can, yeah. What exactly are gravitons? How are they quantified? A graviton is like a hypothetical smallest chunk of gravitational radiation. What keeps gas on Earth in space as a vacuum? Gravity. What excites you every day at work? Well, today what excited me was trying to simplify a calculation that I spent 5 hours on yesterday. I failed. What do you mean by laws are not absolutes? Laws only apply in the regime in which they're observed, right? Sometimes, if you're lucky, they apply in more regimes, but like Newton's universal law of gravitation doesn't apply around black holes. Correlation between gravity and dielectricity? There isn't one. So we can detect gravitational radiation? Absolutely, that's what gravitational waves are. We have LIGO for that. If you know the equation is wrong, doesn't that mean that someone got it right before to know it's wrong? I don't know what that question means. Are you saying matter turns into energy and that's where no. Energy is not a substance. Energy is a property of substance. Energy is a property of stuff. So that the matter disappears and becomes, in most cases, electromagnetic waves, which have energy. The matter also had energy. The energy didn't go anywhere. The energy stayed the same. But the matter disappeared and became electromagnetic radiation. Why aren't gravitons accepted by all? Well, because we don't know how to quantize gravity. Although they are pretty highly accepted. Will there ever be a possibility of time travel in theory? To the future, sure. To the past, I suspect not. Does many worlds serve to explain anything unexplained in our local world? I mean, it explains everything that quantum mechanics explains. How promising is quantum information technology as a career path for someone considering a PhD? I have no idea. I don't even know what that is, to be honest. What are some stereotypes about physics? Watch The Big Bang Theory, I guess. Any proof the quantum field could birth another Big Bang? Not that I'm aware of. Does Bohmian mechanics require FTL information travel? Yes. Is there such thing as magnetic current? Well, in some sense, yeah, there's the displacement current, right? But that's not really what you're talking about. You're talking about like magnetic charges, which we don't know if they exist. If they do exist, then yes. Can you explain the difference in physics for proof, evidence, principle, and theory? In physics, we take proof and evidence to be basically synonymous, or we take proof to just mean really strong evidence most of the time. A principle is just kind of like a vague gesture at a concept that we take as like a guiding light for developing a theory, which is a mathematical formalism that explains something. How many years of school to become a physicist? It depends on when you consider yourself a physicist. I mean, like, if you consider yourself a physicist after your PhD, then somewhere between 9 and 11 years, I guess. How much math do you need to have a deep understanding of physics? A lot, I think, generally. Are you bringing people up? Maybe not tonight. Is it hard to get a job with a master's in physics? No, but you'll end up with an engineering job. How much physics have you done today? Today I wrote a cover letter, so that's some physics. And I did some calculations for a physics problem I'm currently working on. So 5 hours? 4 hours? And then the rest of the day I spent working on another calculation. Are you allowed to talk about theories you've come up with and currently working on? I mean, I'm allowed to, I just choose not to because I don't want you finding me. What aspect of physics are you most interested in? Relativity and general relativity and geometry. Are you naturally good at math? I don't know if I'm naturally good at math, but I am good at math, and it came easily to me. I don't know if that's because like of the way I was raised or if it's some brain thing. I don't know. Are you optimistic on practical fusion power? Yeah, I am. What sort of experiment could expose magnetic monopoles? I don't actually know the kinds of experiments that they run. I haven't looked into the detail. I haven't looked into the details of how those experiments are run, but it's actually not a bad video idea. Maybe I'll look into that. Why does time seem to flow only in one direction? We don't know. What's the hardest math field you've ever studied? The only one I've ever, so like something like algebraic geometry is really hard. I don't understand it very well. Do you play a musical instrument? I used to play guitar. Played guitar for, I don't know, 5 years. I wasn't very good though. Is the matter in black hole close enough to be bonded together by the strong force? We don't know. We don't know what's going on at the interior of the black hole. Thoughts on quantum immortality? Don't do it. It's not real. Thoughts on, oh, okay. What is the strong nuclear force? The strong nuclear force is what holds protons and neutrons together and what holds protons and neutrons together. What I mean is that protons and neutrons are made of quarks, and those quarks are stuck together by the strong nuclear force. But also, the protons are held together to the neutrons and other protons and other neutrons in the nucleus of an atom, again by the strong nuclear force. What currently being explored theory are you super excited about? What's the thing that's most interesting to me right now? Well, there's something called celestial holography and Carolean holography, which are both interesting to me, but they're not things I'm actively working on. But I think that they're promising. We heard grown adults all of a sudden having trouble solving 1 times 1. Distrust, I guess, in everything. What's the origin of the nuclear force? We don't know. It's just a thing that exists in our universe. Is there any proposed limit for the size of a nucleus? Yeah, roughly 180 protons is my understanding is like the upper limit where we think that like they can't exist, something like that. Do you watch anime? Occasionally. Does your wife agree with you with all your beliefs? Most of them. Have you read Feynman's Rainbow? I have not. Favorite anime? The ones I've watched have been like the best ones. So I've watched Death Note. I've watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I've watched Evangelion. I've watched, what else have I watched? There are other ones that I've watched, but those are like the most memorable. Oh, I watched, what was it called? The one where the clothes are your battle armor, which is a very dumb anime. Very funny though. I've watched One Punch Man. I don't know. They're all good. Oops. How do you deal with no definite closure on the universe? I don't know what you mean by that. Are you ethnic in any way? I'm Jewish. Does that count? If strong force equals the gravitational force and this is equal to super force of Planck, I don't know what that question means. What are your thoughts of the universe being isotropic? It seems reasonable. Kill a Kill. Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, I watched that. It was really dumb. Really good, but really dumb. Have you spent whole night studying something? No, I have pretty good work-life balance. Do you recommend a degree in physics? Is it worth it? I mean, I loved it, but if it's not something that you're interested in, don't do it. Like if you're not going into physics, then you'd be better served getting an engineering degree. Is there any well-established mathematics or physics thing that makes you mad? Does anything make me mad? No, not really. Can you explain what the Planck scale is? The Planck scale, it's just a convenient scale where of like size and mass and so on, where we expect quantum gravity to start to play a significant role. How do physicists earn money? We work at universities. I'm glad, Bling Bling. I have a surprising number of fans in Romania. Very surprising. What would happen if the moon disappeared? Well, we'd stop seeing the moon. That'd be the first thing. Tides would stop. A lot of the ecosystem actually kind of functions based off of tides and stuff, so there'd be a lot of significant change to the biosphere, but I mean, Earth would be fine. Thought you were a researcher? Yeah, a researcher at a university. That's where we work. Do you remember your first bit on TikTok? It was a flat Earth thing. I don't remember it though. It was on Maria's channel. Do you think we'll ever make a room temperature superconductor? I'm hopeful. I don't see a reason why it's impossible. Light doesn't bend because it moves within the curvature of space-time. No, light does bend. That's because it moves to the curvature of space-time. Darth Dawkins cooked you. Oh, did he? He cooked me so hard that afterwards he went on a 15-minute ableist rant afterwards and got banned for a week. So I don't know. Did he really cook me that hard if he had to cry for 15 minutes afterwards? Can forces leak to or from extra dimensions? Some people suggest that as an explanation for why gravity is so weak, for example. I'm not sure if it's true. How does gravity automatically deliver the correct amount of force to items of different mass? Well, it doesn't. Gravity, at least the way that we describe it in modern language, is that gravity is the curvature of space-time. So the thing is already in the curved space-time, and then it just follows the trajectory that it gets from being in curved space-time. Do you think pop science is ultimately a good or bad thing? I think it's a good thing. Do you need chapstick? No, I just picked my lips because of ADHD. So please don't get mad at me for that. I appreciate it. Don't bring it up. Makes me self-conscious. Are you hungry? Yeah, kinda. Isn't everything accelerating, at least from some perspective? Yes, however, there are preferred inertial frames. Concerta or Ritalin? Concerta. And I hate it. I hate Concerta. What's the difference between symmetry and supersymmetry? Supersymmetry is just what happens if you take symmetry to the next level. Symmetry is things like if you rotate something, it doesn't change its mass. That would be an example of a symmetry. Supersymmetry is a particular type of symmetry that every matter particle has a force-carrying particle partner, and vice versa. Absolutely, Vyvanse is better than both. I used to be on it when I lived in the States, but it's not legal in this country, so Concerta it is. Do you use quantum computers? I do not. I don't use it for my work. But the universe didn't have curvature because it was flat. So it's flat on large scales, but like on small scales, it absolutely has curvature from, the local gravitational fields. How many languages do you speak? One. This one. When matter and antimatter touch, both disappear and create a lot of energy, right? Yeah, they do. And that's roughly what it means for matter and antimatter to interact. They cancel each other out in some sense of the word. Do you have any trouble putting things together from IKEA? No. I'm pretty good at that. How would you explain string theory in a way everyone would understand? I mean, look, you can't, not fully, but you can say, look, perhaps, so if we think of like the fundamental things that make up matter, think of like electrons and quarks, but maybe even those things are made up of something more fundamental, little vibrating strings. And depending on how they vibrate, you get different particles. That's roughly string theory in a very, very loose sense of the word. Is gravity the result of the expansion of the universe dragging space-time over the mass of matter? No, not really. Is it possible that the other side of a black hole is an opposite universe? I suppose so, but I suspect not. What are your thoughts on Mond? I'm pretty sure it's been pretty strongly ruled out. What are strings made of? They would be fundamental. They would be like the smallest things, so they're not made of anything. They're just there. What is antimatter and what does it do? Antimatter is like regular matter, but opposite in basically all respects. And it blows up when you put it into contact with regular matter. What are the possible connections between consciousness and quantum mechanics? I suspect that there's not really one. Do you think quantum physics and Einstein physics will be reconciled in our lifetime? I hope so. I don't know if a study is retracted. Most of them aren't, but you can always Google. Don't tell me you're a string theory fanboy. No, I'm not really. I think it's still worthy of investigation. It's just not something that I'm particularly interested in, and I don't know if I'm convinced it's true. Why do scientists use the word theory for incomplete hypotheses such as string? Because scientists use the word theory for a mathematical model that purports to explain something. That's the way the scientists use theory. It doesn't, like, you'll hear science communicators say a theory is a well-supported explanation. Like, that's just not how scientists, at least that's not how physicists use the word. We just use it to mean there's some mathematical model that is a potential explanation for something, but it's like a mathematically rigorous model, so it like can be investigated mathematically. Can string theory be aligned with cyclic universe? Probably. We can align with everything. Our universe ever changing its shape? In some sense, it can't, because the universe, like the topology of space-time is the topology of space-time. There's not like some extra dimension for it to change in. Why would math break down in a black hole to be a singularity? Why? Well, it's just if you run the math, you get infinity at the singularity for the space-time curvature. Do you think there's anti-electricity? Yeah, just shoot positrons through a antimatter wire. Now you have anti-electricity. Why did physics stop making progress? It didn't. You just stopped paying attention. Do you own a car? Or do you use public transport? I do not own a car, but I also live in a very walkable city. By the way, y'all, if you're interested, consider supporting the live. I have like a Cash App in my bio, and I also have a Buy Me a Coffee. Liking the live is cool too. These are things that make me want to do Ask a Physicist more. Debates are obviously way more profitable for me because they get more viewers, but Ask a Physicist is important to me, so that's why I do it. But it would be very encouraging to receive support for these two, so I'm just shilling for myself. It makes me feel icky inside to do it, but I do it anyway. Ugh. How do electrons act on an object moving on an accelerated... Wait, what was the question? Moving on... How do electrons act on an object moving on an accelerated... I don't know what that question means. If light can't experience time, how does it feel to change by light shift? It's not that light can't experience time. There is no sense light can't experience anything. Light does things, but there is no reference frame. There is no way to see what light experiences. There's no way to do that. What do you think of the UAP congressional report? I'm not sold. Are you a Sean Carroll fan? Yes, I've sent him an email and he hasn't responded, which makes me sad, but yes, I have. Or yes, I am. Would the vibration of a string change its size? In some sense, yeah. What are the pitfalls of the theory of quantum mechanics? As far as we can tell, there are none. That's the problem. Why is there so much more matter than antimatter? That's a great question. And SciShow just released a great video investigating this. Phew, thanks for the glasses, Fluffy. Is it true that mass warps the fabric of space-time? Yes. If so, then what material is fibers made of? It's not literally a fabric. It's just a metaphor. What is time? Is it something relative to space-time? Time is just one piece of space-time. Thank you for the duck hat, or the goose hat. I guess it's a goose hat. Sci-Hub is also very cool. Who's your favorite Big Bang Theory character? I don't know. Kripke. It's got to be Kripke. Thank you for the goose hats. Much appreciated. If the universe is infinite and folds back on itself, is there a way to verify that? I don't know what that question, it's not really a question that I can make sense of. Can you prescribe me Adderall? Not that kind of doctor. Do you think we'll ever be able to shrink the space between atoms for shrinking technology? No. That's science fiction. Are we heat death forever or Big Bangs on loop kind of guy? I prefer Big Bangs on loop. That seems kind of cool and reasonable to me. Any resources you know similar to hyperphysics? Hyperphysics is great. The only thing that's remotely comparable is something called Omni Calculator, which just has a lot of like short little calculators for doing like conversions between things, which is really nice. But that's the only thing that's even remotely similar. I have to hydrate. Is it true that all of general relativity could be explained by particle interactions? Maybe. I suspect kind of we'll need something more sophisticated than that. Does beer help with the stress tensor? Yes. Do you know about the quantum Stark effect? I did at one point when I was doing my master's, but I haven't thought about it in a long time, so I'd have to refresh my memory. If the fiber of space-time is metaphor, then how do objects fall? Look, the fiber part is the metaphor. Space-time isn't fiber. Space-time, as far as we can tell, is real, or at least it's an emergent thing that is emergently real. But it's not a fiber. It's not like literally fabric. Jason Paget holographic math theory, it's nonsense, unfortunately. What's a tensor? A tensor is something that transforms like a tensor. But more seriously, I actually do a video on that. Go into my mathematics playlist. I have a video explaining what tensors are. And I thought I did a fairly good job. Is passing an object through something like a table purely fiction? It is possible, just so unlikely that it will never happen. What do you think causes the big crunch? What reverses the expansion of the universe? That's a good question. It depends on the dynamics. I mean, at the end of the day, it'll be gravity that does it. If it happens at all, it'll be gravity. But it just depends on how dark energy behaves. Is it true physicists communicate with demons? Yes, it's true. What did you think of Oppenheimer the movie? I liked it. I liked it a lot. Was there ever nothing? I don't think so. Will we be able to use frequencies for phase technologies? Frequencies are just the rate at which something is oscillating. What's your view on consciousness in the brain? I suspect it's a thing that happens in the brain. Where do I start? I want to be a quantum physicist. Go to school. What's the fourth dimension? There are 4 space-time dimensions, 3 of space, 1 of time. So that's why people do that. What do you specialize in? What's your area of expertise? Broadly, general relativity and geometry, with a teensy tiny little bit of poke into quantum gravity. Does our generation have a Stephen Hawking? You mean a guy in a wheelchair or like a brilliant guy? Because, you know, different things. Are physicists part of the proletariat or bourgeoisie? I mean, we're working people. We work for a living, so we're part of the proletariat. Is Elon Musk a genius? If he is, he doesn't show it. Is there any science to believe the speed of light or other constants have changed over time? There's no evidence that they have changed, but people work on these theories. Non-Euclidean geometry? Yes, absolutely. Wouldn't it be possible to travel faster than the speed of light? Would it be possible? I suspect not. Is there any scientific evidence of existence of wormholes? No, we have no evidence, just solutions of equations. Right. Why do we not understand things in the quantum level? We do. That's the problem. We understand it too well. No, I don't think I'm doing guests today. Trying to get a basic understanding of physics and quantum physics, you'll need some calculus. Yes. What is non-Euclidean geometry? So Euclidean geometry has 5 rules. I don't remember what the first 4 are, but the last rule in Euclidean geometry is that 2 parallel lines will always keep the same distance between them. That's one way of phrasing it anyway. However, if you drop that rule and you instead say, well, what if the parallel lines could get closer or further apart? Now you have non-Euclidean geometry. How long did it take me to get my PhD? I did a master's for 2 years and then 5 years for a PhD, which is on the slow side, but I blame COVID. Do you get all the money from TikTok subscriptions? I get about a third. I'm an engineer. If I wanted to go back and self-study physics, how should you do it? Pick up a textbook. You already have the math for it, probably, so it should be fairly easy. Not easy, but like you won't need to struggle with mathematics. And parallel lines mean they would never touch? No, not necessarily. I mean, like we kind of just assume that's like an assumption. You just assume parallel lines never touch. And if you don't assume that, you assume that they can touch, then you get different kinds of geometries. Non-Euclidean geometries. Have you seen the new atom interferometry tech the press is saying could replace GPS? No, I haven't, but it sounds cool. What would you do if you got no high school math education, we're entering college again? It depends on what your major is, of course. Not all majors require math, but take some remedial math classes if you want to do something math related. If entanglement spans time, does that make entanglement non-local? In some sense, entanglement is non-local, yeah. Why do physicists talk about biological, philosophical stuff like consciousness? Because we think we're smarter than everyone. But on a more serious note, I mean, like, these things do have, like, especially philosophical stuff, a lot of philosophical stuff can be informed by knowledge of physics. Like, what is causality? Like, that can be informed by knowledge of physics. You make use of Graham's number in your work? No. What made you want to be a physicist? I thought black holes were cool, and I wanted to do that. And do I get paid well? I do get paid well, but that's unusual for a person in my position. Parallel lines remain parallel. Well, no, look, that's an assumption. They don't have to. Ever seen the astrophysicist Dr. Becky on YouTube? Yeah, Dr. Becky's great. I actually will be at, no, she's at Oxford, right? Well, I'll be in Cambridge in, 3 weeks. Are they still parallel if they touch? Well, no, the point is that they may have started out parallel and then they ended up not parallel. I reached out to her at one point, but she never got back to me, probably because she's busy. I assume that, like, I have a fairly big platform on TikTok, so I assumed these other creators would have wanted to, talk to me, but I guess not. String theory is an extension to quantum mechanics. QFT as a quantized gravity. Yeah, in some sense. What are your opinions on navigating the side effects of taking SSRIs? I've never taken them. I don't know what it's like, so I can't comment. No, I know she's more on YouTube. But, collaborations can happen. I'm going to be in Cambridge soon, so, but oh well. What's the hardest concept for me to grasp? BGG complexes. What do we know about gravity that makes it a theory? Well, we have a mathematical model that purports to explain something, and that's what a theory is. What's BGG? It's an acronym. Is it Belfand? No. I don't remember what it stands for. Look up BGG complex. BGG. Yep, BGG complexes. Very, very confusing. Still don't understand them. Will you debate today? No, not today. Just ask a physicist. Are you religious? I am not. Is it true that we know evolution more than... Is it true that we know evolution more than gravity? No. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Special theory of relativity is wrong. Time to discard it. Well, it's not wrong. It's just not the full story. Is there a topic in physics you don't really understand it and you would like to understand it better? I mean, yeah, there's lots. Thanks for the glasses. Is math grads capable of transitioning into a physics PhD? Yeah, probably. You'll have some catching up to do, but yeah, probably. Why did zero-point energy change name to vacuum energy? I don't think it changed name. It's just a different name for the same thing. What do you think of Least-Molin's black hole universe hypothesis? It's not super well posed. So, is there a course that teaches how to make a mathematical formula? A degree in mathematics would probably do that. Do you know about the delayed choice quantum eraser? Yes, I do. I made a video on it a while ago. So go watch that. Do you mind if I re-ask questions if you missed them? Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Can you explain what observing means in the double slit experiment? Yeah, it just means measuring or interacting with the thing. BGG complexes. COMPLEX. It's a type of mathematical object. Is string theory physics? Yeah. Absolutely it is. What's your opinion on SUSY string theories in general? I'm not so convinced. I'm not so ready to throw out supersymmetry. String theory, I'm not convinced by it. However, I think it's still worthy of investigation. Why does the wave function collapse? I don't think it does. Any evidence for cyclic cosmology? If you mean conformal cyclic cosmology, not as far as I know. Big Bang, Big Crunch cyclic cosmology, there's no evidence for it, but the door is open. Are BGG complexes the bundles of string? No. It's a math thing that I just don't understand. What do you think of Jonathan Oppenheim's work? I haven't read it. What happens if a nuclear bomb detonates in space? It just explodes and stuff goes out. Which JWST experiment or study you're looking forward to most? It's actually not JWST I'm looking forward to most. I'm looking forward to the next DESI data release, which I think is going to happen next April. What do you mean you don't think the wave function collapses? I'm a many worlds kind of person, and in the many worlds interpretation, wave functions don't collapse. Instead, the wave function branches. With what probability do you expect von Neumann level STEM researcher level AGI by 2035? 11 years? 11 years, a lot can happen in 11 years. But like, AGI? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, like, maybe 20%? In some sense, it seems too big, and in another sense, it seems too small. Best memory you have in science class in middle school? I don't think I have any memories from middle school science class. How would we ever prove the many worlds hypothesis? So the thing about the many worlds is that it's the default. In some sense, it should be the default position of quantum mechanics, because it's what happens if you take quantum mechanics and make no additional assumptions. So if you wanted to prove it, you would have to disprove all the other interpretations. What does it mean for a Cauchy horizon in a black hole to erase your past? In some sense, it means that your future behavior does not depend on your past behavior. If you could prove something to Einstein, what would you do? I don't know, that black holes exist. He'd probably be intrigued by that. Do you think LLMs alone can achieve AGI ASI or not the right method? I don't know. I'm not an AI person. How does a rocket move in a vacuum? The same way that, like, if you throw a bowling ball while you're on a skateboard, the same way that you end up going backwards. What's your opinion on Eric Weinstein? He's not a physicist. He's an entertainer. What would you recommend would engage in a thought conversation about subatomic galaxies? I don't like some other person who isn't a physicist, I guess. Can you frame many worlds as higher dimensional entropy? I don't think so. Weinstein is a mathematician? No, he's an entertainer. He has a PhD in mathematical physics, like I do, but he hasn't published any research in 30 years. No, he doesn't have a PhD in math. He has a PhD in mathematical physics. In fact, I don't think that he's ever written a scientific article besides his dissertation. Is the idea of a singularity impossible because of infinite density? No, it's impossible because, it seems like local infinities don't seem to exist. Can you explain, like, if I have the 2022 Nobel Prize theory that universe isn't real. Well, it's not that. But go watch my videos. I have a few videos on the subject, so go watch those. It'll be probably better than me winging it here. How unlikely is the existence of white holes? My guess is completely unlikely, like impossible. We have no reason to think that they're possible. I should explain. So he isn't pushing any boundaries in mathematical physics. He hasn't published anything. Since he got his PhD, he hasn't written a single article, a single like mathematical physics, or a single article in mathematics or physics. He hasn't published anything. As far as I can tell, I checked his Google Scholar page, and I couldn't find anything besides his dissertation. He's a podcaster. He's not a scientist. Not a mathematician. If he is, he's hiding it from everybody, right? Have you ever consulted on sci-fi media film? Yes, I have, actually. Something recent. He's only working on geometric unity nowadays? Yeah, and even then, he hasn't pushed anything out about it, so. What's physically preventing us from knowing both position, momentum, and particle? Particles aren't like little objects, they're waves. And so if you try to localize it to figure out its position, in order to localize it, you have to add a whole bunch of energy to it, which will basically, in some sense, anyway, you have to add a whole bunch of energy to it, which will basically excite it and make its momentum less well known. How do you get a dissertation without publishing anything? So his dissertation is published, but that's it. He doesn't have anything after that. He sounds smart, is he? I'm sure he's smart. But he definitely talks out his ass. At least that's how it seems to me. Do you think there might be something more fundamental than QFT? Maybe. I don't know. Favorite physicist and why is Feynman? No, it's Einstein. Einstein's the GOAT. Any updates in Mond? Not that I've heard of. What areas of physics would a math grad be best suited for? It depends on what your expertise is, but like you will be competent in anything that has to do with like algebraic structures. You'll be competent in anything to do with like differential geometry. So you could pick you could basically pick anything. Anything that's not yeah, you'd be fine in basically anything. As long as you catch up on the physics side, you'd be fine. I want to know the size of a particle that is able to enter its singularity, hence a core. I don't know what that question means. How did you decide what to focus on? I just did whatever my PhD advisor was doing, and I fell in love with it. And it was close enough to what I wanted to do. How do neutrinos form? One of the ways that they form is via beta decay. How much effort would have been saved if electrons were positive and nucleus negative? Not really any. What exactly do you do? Today I did lots of math. I was working on 2 separate computations today. Because it turns out physics is a lot of math. It turns out, at least the kind of physics I do. What's your advisor do? He does, one of the things he does is conformal geometry. So I did that. Please explain black holes and the probability of us being swallowed by one. The probability of us being swallowed by one is basically 0. Black holes are just big lumps of gravity, basically. Big lumps of really strong gravity. How do you feel about the one electron theory? It's not true. It's been superseded. How does ADHD affect your ability to do your job? Negatively is how it affects my ability to do my job. To be honest, negatively. What's the most fundamental subject for physics? Probably quantum theory. What's your daily routine? I'm not going to go into that. What was your PhD dissertation on? It was on conformal hypersurface geometry. I think I'm sick. Will you get me tea? I can't. You're too far away. I'm neurodivergent. I feel like it helps me learning. The thing that it doesn't... Maybe there's an advantage that I'm not seeing, but I don't like it. Is it possible for a single neutrino to oscillate, or does it need an ensemble of neutrinos to occur? In principle, yeah, a single neutrino oscillates. Yeah. You ever use pharmaceuticals to help with your work? I take Concerta. Why don't you like it? It's a learning disability. Why would I like it? Have you published a paper as of recently? Yeah, I mean, my last paper to get published was in May, I think. And I'm submitting another paper. Well, I have a few other papers in the works. It is relative, but like, it's considered a learning disability, right? Like, why would I like that? Is physics difficult? Yes, it can be. Can phase change of matter provide more energy than required to create the phase change? You're asking if phase changes can be exothermic. I don't think so. What's the general workday for a physicist like? It depends very much on the physicist. For me, it generally involves just figuring out what calculations I have to do that day, and sometimes it involves writing. Do I know Ange Dragon? I do not. If a rich philanthropist wanted to encourage physics, where should they donate? Me. They should donate to me. Set me up for life so then I can move back to the States and do research independently. That would be cool. That would be lovely. Have you been hired for any confidential jobs? No. Although I do have a friend who is currently working for the Norwegian military as a physicist. So that's cool. Do you think Penrose's CCC is a possible explanation? I suspect not. Vyvanse is magic, by the way. Did you always want to be a physicist? Yeah, since I was like 7 or 8 or something. Are all physicists atheists? No, but the majority are. Is the core of physics learning about waves or particles? It's about learning about algebra and geometry. Why wouldn't a single neutrino oscillating violate energy conservation because of different masses? Well, because it's not it's not necessarily in an energy eigenstate, right? When a neutrino is emitted, it's emitted via like beta decay, and so all we have is that the whole system is in an energy eigenstate. Not that the neutrino, I mean, like during the beta decay, the neutrino is coupled to the electron, like they are entangled to each other. So the whole system is in an energy eigenstate, even if the individual neutrino, the individual electron, is not. Why do you think most are atheist? Well, I don't know. It just is the case. I mean, I'm an atheist, so I think it seems plausible to me. What's your opinion about deism? I don't care for it. Why is the moon tidally locked in the perfect size and distance for eclipse? Well, it's not. Sometimes it's too small, sometimes it's too big. Why are you an atheist? I just don't see good reason to believe in God, and I see good reason to not believe in God. That's all. What's your opinion about engineers? They're fine. Gosh darn it. Why are ignoring curious people? I'm not. I can't. I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can. Thoughts on emergent space-time? It seems plausible. Can you explain Stokes and Green's theorem in vector calculus? Basically, Green's theorem is a just generalization of Stokes, or is a specific case of Stokes' theorem. Stokes' theorem just says that the total amount of circulation inside something is equal to the total amount of circulation around the thing. Roughly. Are there photon equivalents for other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum? They're all photons. It's all photons. Photons all the way down. Engineers, they're fine. Yeah, I mean, like, it's a fine profession. I don't have a problem with it. If you want to be an engineer, be an engineer. Do you live in the Czech Republic? I do. Do you think a manhole cover the US shot into space made it out of the atmosphere? I suspect it vaporized. Do you believe true anti-gravity is ever possible? Not really. What is circulation? Circulation in the mathematical sense of like a vector field, also known as a curl. How will physicists leverage AI to reshape your field? I don't know. Are there any circular orbital paths observed in the universe since most are elliptical? Probably not. Does general relativity say the Earth can be considered stationary? It depends on what you mean by stationary. The Earth is rotating about its axis. So in that sense, there is no inertial frame that is fixed to the Earth's surface. However, there are inertial frames that are fixed to the, say, the center of the Earth, but non-rotating. Sure. Please explain ring theorem in quantum physics part 1. No, I don't. You'd have to be more specific. Do you mean like rings in the mathematical sense? What's the first cause in your worldview? I don't know if there was one. How often do you get questions that are just strings of buzzwords? Most of the time. Explain a vector field's curl in an intuitive way. It's basically the amount that the vector field goes in a circle, right? Can you say what came before the Big Bang? I don't know if there was a before the Big Bang. So you like academia? Yeah, I love my job. It's a good job. All right, y'all. It has been 1.5 hours, and I have to record a video. So y'all, I'm going to call it a night here. But thanks for everybody for being here. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for more debates.